I left the pictures in an envelope on our bed so that when Cynthia returned from her business trip, there was no way she would miss them. I suspected she might call me at work or even barge into my office to confront me face to face, but I wasn't sure. There was a chance she would do nothing or wait until I got home or even just leave me. When I entered the house, it was quiet. There was no sign of dinner being prepared, no lights on downstairs. I went up to the bedroom and found her there. She was lying on the bed, fully dressed and asleep. Her eye makeup was smeared on both cheeks, and I realized she had been crying. The envelope and pictures were scattered all over the room, some of them torn to shreds. So there was no doubt about how she felt about them. They were pictures of me sleeping with Suzanne Jenkins, the sister of a guy I worked with. And Cynthia didn't seem to be happy about it. I hadn't originally planned to take these pictures. What's more, I hadn't planned to have sex with Suzanne, or anyone else but Cynthia, at all. For almost a year after I found out about Cynthia's business trips that were actually excuses to have sex with black men, I tried to come to terms with it. Cynthia was right about some of the things she said. She had always been the most loving, affectionate, and sexually arousing wife a man could ever dream of having. Both in and out of bed, she did everything she could to please me. We had a wonderful time together, both as lovers and as friends, and when I looked at the marriages of some of my acquaintances and colleagues, there was not one with whom I had any desire to switch places. So I think it's safe to say that it's really only my ego that has suffered. However, never underestimate how important a person's ego is to them. Cynthia's groupthink meant, at least for me, that I was not enough for her. That all my love, affection, and sexual attention was not enough to satisfy her. Every few weeks, she needed a heavy dose of black men to keep her happy. And that gnawed at me. While continuing to be a loving wife at home, she kept up her regular travel and meeting schedule. And with each passing month, the sense of humiliation I felt about what she was doing grew stronger. With each trip, it became harder and harder for me to just happily jump into bed with her upon my return. I met Suzanne at a company picnic when her brother Artie talked me into being her partner in some stupid three-legged race. She was in her early 30s, recently divorced, and very attractive. We came in 4th place and might have won if we hadn't started stumbling near the end. We were laughing so hard, we barely made it to the finish line. Cynthia was on another trip that weekend, so when Artie and his wife invited me to join Suzanne for dinner, I gladly accepted. At the end of the evening, I volunteered to drive Suzanne home. She invited me to come in for coffee, and we sat and talked. I had learned of her divorce, and to my surprise, was incredibly tempted to tell her all about Cynthia and me. But I didn't give in to the temptation. I just couldn't bear the humiliation I would experience if the guys I worked with found out the truth about my marriage. So I simply told Suzanne that Cynthia and I were having some problems. And to my surprise, Suzanne's eyes lit up. I was already thinking it was time to head home when she surprised me again by moving over to the couch and hugging me. "I'm a pretty direct girl, Rob, so I hope you'll forgive me. You're a sweet, funny, attractive man, and the thing is, I haven't slept in months and I'm horny as hell. But I'm not a home wrecker, and I would never approach you unless you made it clear that things weren't going well at home. The last thing I'm looking for is a serious relationship. It'll be quite a while before I'm ready for that. But if you're interested, I'd like to take you to the bedroom. If not, no hard feelings, and I hope I haven't offended you." She took my surprised silence as a refusal, and after a few moments she stood up and said, "I'm sorry, Rob. I can see you're not thrilled with the idea." "Wait, you caught me off guard, that's all. I haven't been with another woman since I started dating Cynthia, and it never occurred to me that I might have that opportunity tonight. I'd love to get into bed with you, Suzanne. But are you sure a one-night affair with a married man, even an unhappily married man, is what you want?" She smiled and replied, "If all goes well, it might be more than just a one-night affair." Sex with Suzanne was too much fun for me to pass up after one night. She was enthusiastic, energetic, and very vocal. The first time we just jumped out of our clothes and got right down to business. Afterward, we rested for a while, smiled at each other, and then played around some more, taking our time. Her body was more plump and rounded than Cynthia's, and her breasts were a little bigger and softer. By the end of the night, I had learned that Suzanne liked different sex, and she liked to try different positions. As I left the next morning, it was clear that we would do it again soon. I made it clear that I had no intention of leaving Cynthia or doing anything that would ruin my marriage, and Suzanne was fine with that. Like I said, babe, I'm not looking for anything serious. But last night was more fun than a barrel of monkeys, and I really hope we do it again soon. For the next 6 months, Suzanne and I met almost every time Cynthia went out of town. Not surprisingly, I didn't feel the least bit guilty about it. Why would I when I knew Cynthia was getting 6 to 12 other people's bodies? I tried to accept her position. What I was doing didn't invalidate anything about our love and affection for each other. I even made sure that my last sex with Suzanne always took place 24 hours before Cynthia returned, to keep my batteries charged for my wife's usual welcome home. Cynthia must have done the same, because with me she never felt relaxed or exhausted. But although the sex was great, and I grew to love Suzanne, it never filled the hole in my heart that Cynthia's out-of-town encounters had made in it. I was sure I was a good lover, and Suzanne's enthusiasm confirmed it. But I still wasn't enough for my wife. I knew that, and it hurt. So when Suzanne told me one day that she was seeing someone special and that it was time for her and me to say goodbye, I made a decision. I didn't want things to continue. I didn't want to find a new Suzanne and continue to have sex behind Cynthia's back while she had sex behind my back. I needed to find a way out of this situation. So I asked Suzanne to get into bed with me again, bought a camera with a timer, and mounted it on a tripod. I took some juicy shots of the two of us in various poses. Then I made some 8x10 prints and left them in an envelope on our bed for Cynthia to find when she returned from her trip. I crouched carefully next to the bed, shook Cynthia gently, and said, "Cyn, honey, I'm home." She lifted herself up and looked at me for a second with dazed eyes, then screamed, "You're a fuck!" and punched me hard in the shoulder with her fist. I pulled her to me, and she sobbed on my chest for about 10 minutes or more, and I just held her, stroked her hair, and mumbled something to her. At last she calmed down, sat up, and looked at me with eyes full of sorrow. I can hardly say, "What the hell were you doing with that harlot?" Can I? Or, "How could you do that to me?" Jesus, Rob, I have no idea what to say to you. All this time I never once thought you would mess around with me, so I had no idea what it was like. And it's awful. "I'm sorry, Cyn," I said. "Not for doing it, but I'm sorry it's hurting you so much." "Who is she? God, she's gorgeous. Just look at those breasts. Is this your way of saying goodbye, honey? Are you in love with her? Or are you just trying to rub my nose in what I did to you?" I shook my head. "No, in all 3 ways, Cyn. She was just a buddy, Artie's divorced sister from work, and I wasn't trying to pay you back. She approached me after the office picnic last summer while you were away, and I couldn't think of a good reason to turn her down. We've been seeing each other on your business trips since then, but now she's met a nice guy she's dating and we've ended the relationship." "Then why the pictures? I never knew anything about it, so why make me so unhappy now?" She started crying quietly again. I took her hand and said, because I didn't want to keep doing this. I didn't want to go out and find another girl to screw with, trying to make myself feel better about what you do when you go out of town. I tried to make myself believe that the nights with Suzanne were helping me come to terms with your adventures. But it didn't work, Cyn. Why don't we go grab a bite to eat at the diner and then come back here and talk some more? She cleaned herself up and we headed out to eat, but it was a quiet meal. Neither of us wanted to make small talk, knowing what lay ahead of us. We skipped dessert, having a cup of coffee at home at the kitchen table. I wasted no time. After all, I'd been thinking about this for months. "I think we have 3 options, Cyn," At least only 3 that I'm willing to consider. First, we can continue as before. You'll continue your activities, and I might find someone else I can spend occasional nights with when you're out. But that's not what I want. I think the sex you have with other people and the sex I have with Suzanne is distancing us from each other. If this keeps up, I'm not going to be very optimistic about our marriage. Secondly, we could agree to be monogamous, as I thought we would be when I took my marriage vows. I said this in a sort of hard voice, and Cynthia looked away. I'll gladly give up any other woman for the rest of my life, but you'll have to give up what you've been doing as well. Or third, we could divorce. You'd be free to have all the fun you want, and you wouldn't even have to leave town anymore, at least not to protect me or our marriage. Cynthia looked at me gloomily for a long time. Then she said, I don't want a divorce, baby. I always meant what I said when I talked about how much I love you. If that means giving up on other men, then I just have to find a way to do it. It's going to be damn hard after all these years. She looked at me with a pleading expression on her face, but I didn't say anything. Finally, she continued. It's going to be damn hard, but I'm going to do it. I put my arms around her and said, let's go to bed. We're both tired and we can talk about it in the morning. The next few days were strange. Cynthia was more lovelorn and less confident than I had ever seen her before. We made love constantly, but gently, without the usual hard thrusts and fireworks. She was affectionate and eager to please, but at the same time a little hesitant, and I understood why. It's hard to be your old confident self in bed when you feel like you're competing with someone, isn't it? I thought to myself, but never said it. Gradually, over the next few weeks, things returned to normal. The cheerful, ambitious Cynthia started showing up more often, and our tender lovemaking became more vigorous and fervent again. On the last night before her next trip, we had another long discussion about my 3 options, and Cynthia confirmed that she was choosing door number 2. Are you sure you can do this? I asked her. If I know I have to, yes, she answered me. It's different now, Rob. Those pictures of you and Suzanne made me feel for the first time what it was like to be in the position I had you in for so long. I didn't like it, and I know you don't like it, so I'm just going to stop. And if that means I come home from my trips hornier than ever, well, you'll just have to take your vitamins. She smirked, and I picked her up in my arms and headed for the bedroom. The happiest day of my life may have come 5 days later, when Cynthia returned from Dallas and Denver. While she was gone, we talked on the phone every night. Unlike before, when I only had her cell phone number, Cynthia now left me a phone number at the hotel in each city. The day she returned, I ran home from the office a little early, and she met me at the door in my robe with a drink and a smile. Come on in, baby. I brought you a little present from your trip. She led me into the bedroom and sat me down on the bed. Then she disappeared into the bathroom for a moment and returned wearing a short red nightie that emphasized her breasts and went down almost to her hips. Here's your present, honey, she cooed, smiling at me. My little kitty who no one but me has touched since the last time you visited her. She missed you so much. Our lovemaking that night was better than anything I had ever experienced. I had never felt closer to Cynthia, never felt more fortunate to have such an amazingly intelligent, gorgeous, sexy, and loving woman as my wife. Between sex, hugs, and kisses, we didn't leave her side for most of the night. The next few months went just great. The new sense of intimacy made everything between us better, both when we were together and when Cyn was away on business trips. For now, there had to be a for now, right? Until the night she was supposed to be staying at the Marriott Hotel in Kansas City, but didn't answer the phone. Not at 9, not at 10, not at 11. At 11:48 p.m., she called me, anxious and out of breath. I'm sorry, babe, I'm so sorry I'm late. The sales meeting dragged on, then the restaurant lost our order, then the clients wanted to sit and chat for a few hours, and now I've just gotten sidetracked. I saw your messages. I'm sorry if you were worried. I thought, why didn't you just call my cell phone? But I didn't. We had a nice, loving chat. I pretended to calm down, and that was the end of it. But everything changed. All my anxieties returned, and I kept wondering if she was up to her old shenanigans again. When she came home 2 days later, I watched her closely. She still looked like the same loving wife, but had she become a little more cautious with me? Did I notice that she looked at me with concern when she didn't think I was looking? I didn't know if I had turned into a paranoid maniac or if something was really going on. But I knew I had to know this once and for all. If she went back to cheating on me now, after our confrontation and all our long talks, all her promises. When she left for Salt Lake City and Las Vegas 3 weeks later, I walked her to the airport and an hour later boarded my own flight to Salt Lake City. I knew that Cynthia usually checked in, changed her clothes, and then went off to business meetings. So I took a cab to the Hilton Hotel, showed my name and lots of ID, said I was in town to surprise my wife for her birthday, and convinced the assistant manager to give me her room key. At 6:15, I was sitting in the corner of the lobby with a newspaper, baseball cap pulled over my eyes, facing the elevators. Sin walked in around 8 p.m. and headed straight upstairs. 30 seconds later, a skinny man with no face walked up to me and sat down next to me. I met her at the airport, followed her here, then to her meetings, then to dinner at the Salt Lake Grill. She was there with 4 men and another woman from about 6 p.m. until about 15 minutes ago. Everything looked pretty decent. It was Ernie Solomon, the private investigator I had hired the week before. He hooked up with me, and for a couple more hours we read the paper together, watching the elevators. There aren't many black people at the Salt Lake City Hilton, but a little after 9 p.m., 3 tall black men entered together and went up to the 5th floor, the same floor where Cynthia's room was located. 20 minutes later, 2 more men appeared, also tall and good-looking. They too exited on the 5th floor. I waited until about 9:55 p.m. and then pulled out my cell phone. I called home first and checked my messages. Cynthia called and said she'd go back to her room, watch TV, and go to bed early. She'd talk to me in the morning. I used the hotel home phone to call her room and listened carefully to what I could hear in the background. "Hey, babe. It's me," I said. "Sorry I missed your call earlier. I got held up a little late at work. How's it going?" When she spoke, there was only silence behind her. "I'm fine, honey, just tired. I miss you already. Is there anything on TV, or did you fall asleep already?" "No, I just turned it off. Actually, Rob, if you don't mind, I'd like to go to bed. Do you mind?" I still didn't hear anything suspicious, but Cynthia's voice seemed strained, as if she was struggling to control it. "No, it's okay, babe. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Love you." "Love you too, sweetie. Good night." It was a little while before she returned the phone to its stand. A split second before the line disconnected, I heard it. Cynthia started moaning. Not hard, but enough. We waited 10 minutes, then took the elevator to the 5th floor. In the empty hallway, I asked Ernie for his gun and put it in my pocket. "Wait for me in the lobby, okay? I'll only be a couple minutes late." I quietly opened the door to room 519 with my key and closed it silently behind me. A short hallway led to the bedroom, where I could hear activity and the creaking of the bed being actively used. I cautiously poked my head into the room. Cynthia was lying on her side, and the 3 black guys I had seen earlier were doing whatever they wanted for her. When I pulled out my cell phone to take some pictures, Cynthia saw me first. I quickly took 6 or 8 pictures before anyone had time to react to the flash. But then they turned around in shock, their surprised faces looking menacing. "Hey, man, what the fuck are you doing?" The 2 on the couch jumped up and headed towards me. I couldn't take my eyes off Sin, who was looking at me with a pained, guilty expression on her face. Her flushed face had turned completely pale. Her beautiful hair hung in sweaty strands around her face. Coming to my senses, I grabbed my gun and pointed it directly at the 2 men who were approaching me. "Stay where you are, assholes. Now step back and sit back down on the couch. That's it. Very good. I gestured at the other three. Go over there with them. I'm actually pretty good with a gun. You want to try? Looking at me, they moved away from the bed and headed towards the couch. Finally, Sin spoke in a shaky voice. Rob, honey, I'm so... Shut up, Sin. You're not saying a single word I'd be interested in hearing. I said this in a cold voice, not taking my eyes off the 5 naked black guys. One of them said, Look, man, what the fuck do you want? Their behavior pissed me off. They acted like I owed them something. I wanted to leave them alone, figuring Cynthia had probably gone out on them herself, but changed my mind. If you haven't figured it out yet, asshole, the accomplice you had is my wife, and I'm not too happy about it. Now each of you will now stand up, one at a time, pull your wallet out of your pants and place it right here on the floor in front of me. Anyone who moves too fast or tries anything stupid will get shot, understand? Now you, I said, pointing to one of the guys on the couch. You first. Slowly, carefully, watching me minute by minute, one by one they pulled out their wallets and dropped them in front of me. I heard the sounds of Cynthia sobbing, but paid no attention to her. I carefully bent down and picked up the 5 wallets, stuffing them into my pockets. Very good. It's nice to see that you all can follow directions. I'll be leaving now. You can stay and play games for the rest of the night. Or you can get out of here right now. It doesn't matter to me. No one is to leave this room for the next 10 minutes unless you want a bullet in your ass. Your wallets will be downstairs at the front desk. Without turning away from the 5 men, I turned to Cynthia. Don't go home for at least 2 days. Your things will be packed in the garage. You can rent a truck and come get them. Don't try to contact me. I backed slowly toward the door, keeping my eyes on the men, though they seemed to be quite a bit startled by the gun. Cynthia was sobbing, trying to plead with me. Rob, please, baby, it was a mistake. I didn't mean to. Leave it alone, Sin. There's no one here who cares. I reached the door to the lobby, turned, and left. Going downstairs, I discreetly returned Ernie's gun and handed him the 5 wallets. She slept with 5 guys. Here are their wallets. I'd like you to write down their names and addresses and then leave the wallets at the front desk. I held out my cell phone to him. I have some good pictures of all these guys with Cynthia. Please check out these guys, the ones who are married or have girlfriends. Make copies of the photos and give them to the women. Then you can mail the phone to me. Ernie nodded, then shook my hand with a mournful expression on his face. I got the feeling he'd seen a lot of scenes like this before. Damn it, she really loves me. I know she does. Ernie looked at me and nodded again. That's always the worst, he said.